Yes.
Wee bit of a second wait. Everybody's logging in already on the Facebook Live feed. Really good to see you. Hope you feel the same way. We're just going to post this live for people to connect from around the
We're
world
talking,
and maybe even
right?
on the space station. I just need to change the settings. It's one of the hang-ups of this Mevo is that it launches for friends only, and then you can't share it to other groups that you're in. All right, well, welcome aboard, everybody. I'm Doug Pagitt from Minneapolis, but my friends are in San Antonio.
Hello.
Hey, friends, that's Abe you can see there, Suzanne snuggled away in the back. There's Randy,
Hey.
Derek, and they are on a journey. The journey of hope is not just this tour they are on, and if you've been following my life, you know that we were all co-defendants in an action at the United States Supreme Court, asking for the country and for the Supreme Court to pay attention to the need to stop executions. And so we were together for that day. We were arrested together, had a trial together, and now these good friends are traveling around the country trying to raise that same awareness. So from courthouse steps to hotel rooms in San Antonio, Texas. Um, the first one there that you see on the screen, friends, if you're looking, that's Abe, and Abe is one of the a co-defendant, a co-conspirator, but also one of the primary organizers of all of this. Not just this tour, but of a number of us. And I know that I have seen, Abe, your work that has made it possible for me to be involved. So I want to thank you for your years of dedication and work on this, and for including me in all this, and for all the good work that you've done for.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. And you see in the top of my head because it's so. I'm basically trying to post the link onto our Facebook page, which I think I've got done. And people should have. I can see people are watching, so that's
See,
exciting.
people all over the world.
Yeah.
And I
All
like
right.
to make the
Well,
little joke. Abe, tell us a little bit about how you got into this. For each of the other three that we're going to have a chance to talk with today, for Suzanne, for Randy, for Derek, they have their own stories of how they ended up trying to work toward the abolition of executions in this country.
sure.
How did you find yourself in this work, and why are you so dedicated to it like you are?
Well, the nutshell is that I attended a talk on the campus of Ohio State University and found the speaker. I wasn't expecting a speaker about the death penalty, but there she was talking about the death penalty, and I argued with her and said, "An eye for an eye. I'll pull the switch myself, and it's the best justice system in the world. And if that includes the death penalty, fine with me." And then I tried to prove those people wrong. And in trying to prove them wrong, I found out that everything I believed about the death penalty, the truth was the opposite.
Hmm.
And in that forced me to recognize that we have to try to fix the system. And if we can't fix the system, we have to get rid of it. And then in 1993, I went on an event called the Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing, which was the first journey of hope that ever happened in this context. And at that time, the journey was a project of a group called Murder Victim Families for Reconciliation. And Murder Victim Families for Reconciliation is what it sounds like, the victim families who want a different way than the death penalty. And it was there that I met people, murder victim family members. I met Suzanne Bosler, who we're going to hear from in a little bit on that trip, um, and uh, and so many other people who are murder victim family members, or the families of people on death row, or the families of the executed, or death row survivors. Um, Eventually, we started meeting people who are corrections workers who have been traumatized by their participation in execution and who have left that work. Um, and I came to understand the collateral damage of the death penalty, how it touches people far beyond the murder victim and the person who's accused of crime. And that's just informed my work ever since. And I just kept getting more and more involved to the point where on the journey in Virginia in 1996, that we recognized that there just wasn't enough national support for grassroots activism and direct action kind of work. And I mean, there we were in Virginia, especially when we were in Northern Virginia, right across the river in Washington, D.C., where all these national groups, and none of them were really being helpful or engaged or involved. So that's changed a lot. And that was the impetus for me to decide, how am I going to do this full time? How am I going to earn a living with this work? I don't earn much of a living, but I've been able to scrape it by ever since, in various forms and different positions that I've been able to get. I believe that the words that are carved into the face of the United States Supreme Court building: equal justice under law. That's the bedrock foundation of our legal system. I no longer call it a criminal justice system. I call it a legal system because it fails us. We don't need that singular ideal that everybody ought to be treated fairly and equally. And that's my passion. That's what I believe. That's the thing that makes me the maddest, the most angry, is when I see injustice. And I feel like I have to do something about it. And there's a lot of injustice in the world. There's a lot of people working on a lot of other issues. There's a few people working on this one. And that's why I stay focused on this issue.
Well, Abe, that's great. And thank you for your willingness to share that, your passion, because I think anyway, it really matters. Hearing you give that chronology, it's just dawning on me that you said 1993, you went on your first journey of hope. Mm-hmm. Anger or frustration or demand for change, that doesn't fuel someone for 30 years. So the thing that's been amazing to me to watch all of you in this work you're doing, and even the name of the organization and of these tours is Journey of Hope. It seems like not much has changed in the arena of executions and the views toward capital punishment for people sort of from the outside, right? We still kind of do it. People are still conflicted about what they think about it.
A lot has changed.
Tell us about that. What has changed? Because for some people, they just think, maybe what you thought when you walked into that lecture hall at Ohio State.
Sure. Well, for one thing, death sentences and new death penalty and new capital indictments and executions are all trending downward. And while there'll be a little bit of a rise in 2017, we've had the last 2 years the lowest number, 2 years in a row, of new capital indictments, new death sentences, and executions in this country in more than 20 years.
Wow.
And to bring it home to Texas, where we are now, this is the 6th time we've done a full tour of Texas. And the first one was in 1998. I helped organize that tour. That was at the height of executions in this country. We had almost 100 executions in 98, 99, 2000. Dozens and dozens of executions, many of them right here in Texas.
Yeah, that was a big deal when George Bush was running for the presidency. I remember that all the executions, and he kind of came in as this, person who was really supportive as a Republican of maintaining the execution culture.
That's right. Yeah. And even he has expressed some reservation about it these days. But to bring it home to Texas in 1998, when we did our first tour, we had people standing up and arguing with us in our presentation. We had lots of executions that actually happened during the journey. There were 3 scheduled this year, and 2 of them were staged. We are almost kicking ourselves for not starting a couple days earlier, because maybe the journey magic would have impacted that other execution too. Being a little facetious there, but at the end of the day, what we have is growing acceptance. We had in 1998, all the newspapers were totally for the death penalty. Now we had a terrific op-ed, and I'll post the link here on the feed in a few minutes when somebody else is talking. A terrific op-ed by Amy Lynn White, who is one of the murder victim family members on this tour, talking about and explaining these issues. But more important, we're speaking in schools and colleges and churches, and nobody's getting up to argue with us.
Wow.
They're hearing the message.
Like you have sensed a sea change in the response of people. You've noticed a change in how people are responding.
Tremendous change in the response of people. So the Houston Chronicle ran this terrific op-ed, but they themselves have an editorial position now opposed to the death penalty.
Oh wow!
Many of the newspapers in Texas have now taken an editorial position against the death penalty. saying it's time to get rid of it, or at least raising serious concerns about the application of death penalty.
Yeah.
But even in Texas, the number of executions is down. I'll tell you something else. In Texas, in one of our events in Huntsville, in Harris County, which is huge, the chief of staff of the new district attorney for Harris County came to the event and talked about what they're doing. And that new district attorney in Harris County, it's like, if you look at the number of executions, what states executions have happened,
Yeah.
you have Texas, then Harris County, Texas, and Virginia.
Wow.
Okay. And now we have a district attorney in Harris County who is very reluctant to seek the death penalty, as opposed to the one that was there 20 years ago, who would seek it every single time he had the opportunity. We have the chief of staff came to that event, basically shared that, like many politicians these days, he personally opposes the death penalty, but she's going to carry out the law.
I see.
But that doesn't mean that you have to do it every single time it's possible. You have to look for the worst cases, or the cases where it makes the most sense. And more often than not, you find that it doesn't.
Well, thanks for all that work. So the great thing about this group that's together and traveling there, and you're to call it a journey, in one sense, this is the long journey that family members are on and that advocates are on. But you guys are actually traveling around. So you've pulled together people on this 10 or 12, 14-day trip. How long have you been traveling? 17 days.
17 days. And you have 3 weekends and the 2 weeks in between.
Yeah. And where are you in that schedule? Where
so
are you in the 17 days?
We're in the middle of the second week. We have 2 more days here in San Antonio, and then we're off to Austin, where there's a big march and rally that will happen on Saturday. And then we'll start to, people will start to go home, and we've got a few more churches that we'll talk in on Sunday in Austin. And then this one wraps up.
Yeah, that's a big project. You getting tired of each other yet?
We've had our moments.
A little bit, yeah, as everyone does. You travel together that amount of time.
About this, and we have to say this to ourselves sometimes. We have 2 things that you'll enjoy, I think. One is our journey mantra is, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape.
Blessed are the flexible.
For they shall not be bent out of shape. And some of us have gotten out of shape a little bit, but then the thing is that we're a group of people who, some of us have forgiven the murderers of our loved ones and even gone on to help them get off the death row.
Yeah, that's been the amazing thing for me to see, is the people that are together. And I wouldn't have thought this until I met all of you, that the group that you have together, as you mentioned, are people from every side of this, people whose family members were murdered. And sometimes people think, well, what do you say to family members of murder victims if you're against the death penalty? And the great thing about this group is you get to hear from those people. Suzanne will say something in a minute. And it also includes people whose family members were executed, and it includes people who were wrongly convicted, that seemingly people from every background on this topic have joined together in the work that you're doing. That's incredible.
Sometimes we even have people who are former executioners be a part of it.
Really?
We don't have any of those people with us right now, but we do have the 3 people we're going to talk to next, all of whom were arrested together with us, as you mentioned earlier, and all of whom are so passionate and dedicated to this issue that this is the priority to take place on their life, so what they're going to do next. For Derek, it's a choice of going out and celebrating his birthday, his 2nd birthday today, which he'll tell you about,
yeah.
Or coming here and being with you. And he made a choice to come here and be with you.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you, Derek. Good to see you again.
Okay.
You wanna slide in?
Yeah, let's slide Derek in.
Thank you, Abe, for all you've done.
The Journey webpage is journeyofhope.org. We've had a little struggles getting that organized. So actually, if you go to deathpenaltyaction.org, deathpenaltyaction.org, and I'll post some link, and then /Journey of Hope. That's where all the details about what we're doing, as well as links to all the articles and the media coverage that have happened, and a lot of stuff being posted on the Journey of Hope Facebook page.
That's great.
Well.
Thanks. Yeah,
And
I will also put that in the string here in the comments so people can click on it. And people can make donations. They can join you. They can support you in all kinds of ways. There's material. There's all kinds of ways for people in their own spaces to be involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's introduce Derek Wayne Jameson, and then after him we'll have Randy Gardner, and after him we'll have Suzanne Bosley. Okay.
We'll end on a high point. Hey, Derek. Nice to see you, buddy. Derek, there are people who today had to look at their phones to remember that it was October 25th of 2017. You don't tend to forget October 25th.
Nah, I can never forget October the 25th. Doug, October the 25th is the day I was sentenced to die in the state of Ohio. And it's also the day that I walked off Ohio's death row a free man.
And the irony of the idea that you were convicted of murdering someone, which you were later exonerated for, on October 25th, and the day that you were released from prison, was it 25 years later?
20 years later.
20 years later, that 20 years later, on the same day, October 25th.
Same day that my worst day of my life also became the best day of my life. You know, I woke up this morning, I just wanted to get out and celebrate. You know, I'm glad to be here because you know what I stand for. I'm an abolitionist.
Yeah, and you became an abolitionist for a whole different set of reasons than Abe or than Randy behind you or Suzanne, who we're going to hear. You found yourself on the convicted side of the death penalty.
Right.
Had you that entire experience? How old were you when you were convicted in 1985?
I was 24 or turning 24 years old. I should have been out on my way to college. I was one of the best athletes in my city. You know,
man,
I was living an amazing life. You know?
And all of that went away, and you were accused of killing someone, and then the state of Ohio wanted to execute you.
Yeah, I had 6 days of execution on Ohio's death row. Can you imagine having 1 day of execution? They came and killed me 6 times. They asked me where did I want my body. And,
Derek, I've tried. Honestly, since we met, I have tried to consider what that would feel like to have an execution date set and then have it set aside or stayed. I can't even imagine what that was like, let alone 6 times.
It's the most awful feeling knowing that you know what time you're gonna be executed. You know, and they come and check the veins to see that your veins good enough to shoot the parts in them. You know. And it's just awful, man.
And Derek, you have told, and I'd love for you to tell some of these stories. This wasn't a hypothetical. We might execute you. People that you had spent time with as your cellmates were executed by the state of Ohio. Yeah, your friends were executed.
Since 1999 in the state of Ohio, we didn't have 55 executions in the state of Ohio. I remember the very first execution. It was a young man by the name of Wilson Berry. He volunteered to be executed in the state of Ohio. And after Berry was executed, like a dark cloud came over the state of Ohio. They started killing my friends one after another. You know, these were young men that I learned to love. You know, they called them monsters and animals and stuff. But these were young men that made awful mistakes and cost them their lives. You know.
The trauma that you must have experienced must continue to visit you, even as you have to do this good work you're doing now all these years later and traveling around and talking about this. And I'm sure there is this thrill for you on October 25th. But it's got to bring back some hard nights and some inability to sleep through the night or to make it through the day with, clear thought, huh?
It's been really hard. It's been October 25th is one of my worst days, but it also one of the best days of my life too.
I mean, what a mix.
Think about it out. The most worst day of your life, then the same day is the best day of your life. You know, the day it's my 12th year of freedom. In 12 years to this day, I was sentenced to die. And it was 12 years to this day, I walked off the death row a free man.
What did you do that first day 12 years ago on October 25th? Where does someone even go when you're leaving death row? And You
Well,
realize
my
that you.
first place, the first thing was go get something to eat. And I remember we went to the Waffle House.
Awful.
Oh, that become one of my favorite restaurants on the planet. The Waffle House. God, that
Uh,
food tastes so good. I hadn't had that taste that good since, you know.
I feel like I want to go to a Waffle House every October 25th myself.
Yeah.
And
Ain't nothing wrong with it. I'm sponsoring the Waffle House, but they all out. But that was good food, you know. For a person that's been incarcerated 2 decades, come home and enjoy a meal, sit down and able to enjoy a meal for the first time, you know,
yeah,
it's
Derek,
amazing.
you have also then said you want to travel around with this group and with others and try to raise your story so people see it. It's one of the your story is the nightmare situation for so many people that a wrongly convicted person would then have their life taken. Um, and I'm sure there's other exonerees who have chosen different ways that they're going to lead their lives. You've chosen to travel around for 17 days, 12 years later in San Antonio and across Texas and around the country, trying to raise these issues. What is it that keeps you motivated in this way and not just wanting to say, that I want to take the freedom I have and get out of the entire execution industry, but instead you've stayed in it to try to help people see all this differently.
It's like this is my calling, being abolitionist, because what I've
Mm.
been through, you know. Uh, they destroyed my family and it
Mm.
destroyed a lot of my friends. And I got to do this. This is my passion now to end the death penalty in the United States. Cause killing people is wrong. It ain't no good way to kill nobody. You know, and they make too many mistakes. 119th federal exonerated in the United States. There's 160 men and women that this didn't happen to. That's why I got to do this. I got
Yeah.
to be involved. That's why I got these my close friends with me, and they support me, and we support one another. We all support. We all against the same issues. You know, we all against the tough money, and we all hug one another and dry one another tears. You know,
Yeah.
because we in it. We in it to win it. You know, we trying to end this in America. You know.
Yeah. And your commitment is beyond, your personal commitment is beyond don't execute the innocent. You're committed to making sure that we stop executions of everyone. Can you talk a
Yeah,
little?
all over the world. I wish because this is a way. It's a thing called life without parole. We need to use that because if you make a mistake with life without parole, go get this man out the cell and release.
Yeah.
Go get my friend out the graveyard and release him. You know, you make a mistake. 119th mistake they made. They didn't hate 160 mistakes in the United States.
Yeah.
Men and women that's been falsely accused and sentenced to die for something they do. You know, and should no man have a right to say he should live or die in America? If you just giving them too much power, having the death penalty in the state you live in. You know, if you got the death penalty in the state you live in, you said it's all right to kill you, your family member, your mama, your daddy, your sister, your brother. So we need to stop this madness, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And and it's only me. And the thing about it, in America, only poor white people and poor black people and poor Hispanic stuff. It ain't handed out equal, you
Yeah.
know. So that's wrong, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, those statistics that you were the 119th exoneree, that's since like 1977, right? A hundred
1977,
since
right?
and there have been 161 exonerees. It's like 10% of the people who have been executed have also been exonerated. That is a huge failure rate.
It,
It seems just on that argument alone. And then you add to that your comment that the people who are accused or are sentenced with the death penalty tend to be those who are poor, whether they're white or Hispanic, black. It's unfair. And you start to see that connection between your personal story and that which was motivating Abe a few minutes ago, that it doesn't feel like it's equal justice under law. And then I agree with your point so well that it's just not justice to kill someone for killing someone. Even I've totally turned the corner on that. But I know people who think, boy, we have to have an ultimate sentence, that kind of thing. we have to have something. If life is so valuable, if someone takes another life, what do we do? How,
Life without parole is the ultimate sentence.
that's right.
That means if you give a person life without parole, this man ain't never get out of jail. So, and we know that we need a sentence for all these, for the crime, but death is not the answer. Death has never been the answer. We make too many mistakes. And first of all, we shouldn't be killing people. Should no man have a right to say who should live or die in America anyway? You know?
Yeah.
But Jesus Christ was executed at the age of 33. Why are we still executing human beings anyway?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, Derek, did the state of Ohio, do they ever even apologize to you for wrongly incarcerating and threatening you with death for all those years?
No, I never got an apology from no one. You know? I haven't even been compensated for what they done to me. After 20 years on Ohio death row, they gave me $75 and told me to get the hell out of there. If you was my friend.
Wow.
So maybe get the hell out of there, you know.
Oh, Derek.
That's all.
Wow. And I'm sure you just wanted to get out of there at that point. I'm sure you took them up on that offer to get out of there.
I took them up on that.
Yeah. Well, I can't apologize on behalf of the state of Ohio, but on behalf of humanity, I add my voice to I'm really sorry that happened to you. And I'm really proud of you for working hard to make sure that doesn't happen to others.
Yeah, that's why that's the reason I do what I do, because I hate to see a mother or families go through what my family went through. It actually destroyed my family.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't die on death row, but the death penalty cost me my friends, family, my mom.
Is your mom still alive?
1997.
Oh.
One of the first days of my life, I was on death row, and the guards come to my cell one morning, and I was sitting on my bed waiting on a visit. And all these guards was in tears. They told me that my mom had passed away that morning, you know? And all I could do was picture my mom laying in the morgue. I knew why my mom died. I knew the cause of death, you know? Suffered so much. And all these other families, I don't want to see another family suffer like this, you know?
Wow.
That's what keeps me going. And the thing about it, all 55 of my friends that was executed in the state of Ohio, I mean, that's a certificate of homicide.
Wow.
That means state sanctioned murder.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, for you to know 55 people who were murdered. I mean, and I refer to execution as a state sanctioned murder. So that's unbelievable.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, we call that a terrorist attack when someone does it to a crowd of people, and rightly so. And we recognize the atrocity of killing 55 people. For you to have 55 friends executed.
And on each one of their death certificates got homicide, you know?
Unthinkable.
And I know for sure that they didn't kill innocent people in the state of Ohio, because they tried to kill me and Allison. You know?
Yes.
I had 6 days.
Yeah.
They came to kill me 6 different times, you know, and I'm still alive. I'm still here breathing. And I'm here to speak out against the death penalty, and I'm going to continue to speak out all over the world against the death penalty until they end this madness, you know? Because it's just wrong. Killing people is just wrong. We got alternatives to killing people. You can lock people up the rest of their life. You can live 100 years. You ain't gonna live. Who's gonna live 100 years in jail?
Yes.
Yeah. So we got alternatives to the death penalty. Death penalty ain't never been a deterrent anyway. You know, our death penalty is revenge, and all the death penalty does is make more and more murder victims. Because all 55 of my friends that was executed in the state of Ohio, now their family become murder victims.
Yeah. Derek, thank you, and happy October 25th in all the ways that can be a good day. Man. Happy Life Day, buddy. That's great. This is a good day. It's really an honor to talk to you any day, but especially on this day. So thanks.
Thank you, my brother. I love you, man. I wish I was there to hug.
I wish I was there.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, buddy. And then now we're going to be joined by Randy Gardner, and it's another part of that story. Hey, Randy. Hey, good to see you. Your part in how you were drawn into this work is much different than Abe's, different than Derek's. It's your own story, and it involves your brother.
June 18th, 2010, after serving 25 years on death row, my little brother, Ronnie Lee Gardner, was executed by firing squad. Most people think firing squad, again, we go back to that something a terrorist group would do. Tied my brother to a chair, grabbed his legs, grabbed his arms, put him in a little white heart. His heartbeat, seen where it was on his chest, a little circle on his chest, 25 feet away. 5 marksmen, high-powered 30-30 rifle caliber gun, fired and blew my brother's chest pretty much out of his body. To me, that's a terrorist act. That's something I should do. It's not cruel and unusual punishment to the condemned. Well, it certainly is to our family and society.
Yeah.
I had to look at my brother's chest. And, I thought for sure I did it only because I want to make sure they did it quick and shot in the right places. Because I heard of a couple of cases in the far past where people moved and they shot him in the arm, shot him in the neck, different things. But
Randy, what year was your brother executed?
2010, so 7 years ago.
2010. I think for people hearing this and hearing you say that your brother was strapped to a pole and shot by 5 people under state-sponsored action in the year 2010 seems almost impossible for them to believe. I'm sure there are people thinking, where do we use firing squads in the United States? And there's an important piece to all of this, right? Your brother was executed in the state of Utah, right?
Correct.
Why is it that the state of Utah uses firing squads?
It goes back. There's an old blood atonement thing that the Mormon Church had years ago. The Mormon Church claims that they don't believe in this anymore, but I believe that's why the state of Utah still has it.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, well, your brother picked the firing squad. Well, he really didn't have too many choices. He didn't pick it originally. He said, Your Honor, I would rather die by natural causes, knowing that he deserved what he was getting punishment. But if I have to choose, I'll choose the firing squad. So not very good picks to choose from. Lethal injection, he did change his mind on lethal injection at one point because it had kids. It traumatized his kids as bad as it did me or anybody else. But,
I mean, the cruelty that there is in the idea that you would ask someone who's being going to be executed what method of execution they want to have, to me, just carries a kind of cruelty to it that seems unthinkable. And I'm so sorry for you that you had to live through that. And the trauma of this, of your own family having to be the survivors of your brother's legacy. Is that what's motivated you to get out on the journey of hope and to be traveling around Texas and other places in the country?
Well, originally, I was just lost. I didn't know what to do. My niece tried to kill herself. Took a bunch of pills and in the hospital for days in intensive care. And happened the second time. So I was lucky to get involved with the Journey of Hope. I got online trying to find some help. The anti-death penalty activists in the Journey of Hope come up. I emailed them and made a phone call, and the president of the Journey of Hope called me back within, I think, 12 hours and talked to me and invited me out here to Texas, matter of fact. And that was just about 4 or 5 months after my brother was executed.
Oh, it's incredible.
Invited me out here, and I spent 4 days with 4 men that were exonerated. And I never in the world thought it was anybody not guilty on death row. I was kind of scared and thought it was a good setup. I was pretty paranoid at that point. Didn't know if the state would set me up. I didn't know what to think. At this point, I was diagnosed last year, 6 years later, with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Of course. Yeah.
So most people that are get involved in had their loved one executions, we all got the same diagnosis. It's not nothing we chose. We never chose to be in it. No one wants to.
Yeah, and Randy, this, frankly, the bravery that you show to take your own story that's still so painful for you, to be willing to share that broadly with other people, to travel and have to relive that experience, and to have to now find yourself doing these conversations or standing in front of groups of people in churches, or having someone, even risking that someone would argue with you that the execution of your brother was a good thing, to have to hear that's really putting yourself in a difficult situation. And I think it's incredibly brave.
brave or crazy. I can't not do it. I'm compelled to do it. And, you know, it makes me feel better. Gives me the faith that life's going to be okay, and at some point we'll get rid of this death penalty. And I hope sooner than later. Utah still has it. Have a legislation in Utah that said all the people on death row. In an interview I did on Vice News last year, or this year, he said all the people on death row are monsters, and we need to terminate them.
Yeah.
It's like for someone in modern times to talk like that guy is as crazy as anybody I've ever heard. And to feel that way, luckily I've got the forgiveness factor down finally after about 4 years to really learn that and understand it. But I do forgive that man, and I feel sorry for him, and I forgive the correction officers that were involved in my brother's execution. My brother at the time even told me, Randy, forgive these guys. You know, they're just doing their job.
So your brother was encouraging you to forgive the people in the prison system that were part of his execution, because they were also victims of this bad system.
Right. And I've learned that. I didn't at the time, but I have learned that. I've met like Dr. Alan Alt, that was a correction warden over a prison that had executed 4 people and was responsible, and it broke this man down. And I've watched movies and documentaries like There Will Be No Stay by Patty Dillon. It shows that aspect of people that are correction officers. Suicide rate among correction officers has been involved in execution very high. You know, it's breaking these people down. In the beginning, they were my enemies, and now I feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
And so, you know, everything that we're doing will help.
Yeah, the death penalty, the whole system just seeks, kills, and destroys everyone in its path, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's
so Randy, there's another piece of your story that I think is really helpful for people to hear, and that is, as a family member anywhere in the system of a family member being murdered, a person in their life being on death row, it's shocking how many people this touches. They often don't know who to turn to or where to go. And I was just talking with a woman the other day whose family member was murdered, and I turned her to Journey of Hope. But she lives in California. She had no idea that there was a group of people anywhere that she could talk to. There's no people with the state that helped her. There's no victims ombudsman that directed her toward Journey of Hope. She's totally alone, floating out there. And people, they don't even know what to say to her. Her dear friends, or that was a year ago, so they stopped talking about it now because they don't know what to say or what to do. And you were in that same situation, just finding your way. And then you just went on the internet and started doing Google searches for.
I was so lost and confused, and didn't know who to talk to, and my family was lost and confused. The main members of it that were Ronnie's children, and after my niece trying to kill herself a couple times, I Googled it. The Journey of Hope was the first thing that popped up, and it really saved my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hope everybody knows that Journey of Hope exists, and that it's not just a traveling experience for people who have the kinds of stories that you all have. It's a whole network of people that you get connected with around the country to be caring and supporting in what you're doing.
Since 2011, I've been on every journey every year. I've been to Uganda, and we've been to Rwanda, and to Indiana, and Texas 2 times, and Nebraska. I carried my brother with him. This is ashes. And this little thing has a little bird on it. I don't know if you can see it.
Wow.
Play that song. I wanted to play that song. It was
yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Free Bird by Leonard Skinner. One other thing I just did, I brought his the show.
Oh, this is incredible. I'm so glad you did.
Where it is, and it don't say homicide. It says
death. Gunshot wounds to the chest, tobacco use, unknown if used. But it does say manner of death, homicide.
So the death certificate issued by the state of Utah in your brother's death said the cause of death was gunshot to the chest as a homicide.
To the chest and homicide, yeah.
As a legal homicide. And this is the blunt reality of this legal system that we have that wants to say that one homicide is part of the legal system and one homicide violates the legal system. It's and your brother's death certificate. I'm so glad you carry it and show it. I remember in our trial you brought that up too. The judge that we when people are doing what you all are doing, whether it's in conversations like this or rallies or direct action against the government, you're trying to stop homicides, and that's not hyperbole. That's actually what you're trying to do. Your brother was a victim of a homicide.
Exactly. And that, like you're saying, there's no place for us to go. They don't look at us being victims, because my brother perpetrated the crime. And well, if your brother wouldn't have killed somebody, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
You would be getting treated like this. But and it just don't always happen. The family of the person my brother was on death row for killing. 25 years later, the 85-year-old man from North Carolina, his father, and my brother shot and killed. Said, "My son, don't execute Ronnie Lee Gardner. Because he murdered my son. My son was against death penalty also. He would be defended on his life." But they don't look at that type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's a powerful victim impact statement. And they just let that go by. They had their mind made up to do something. And Utah's no different than the other states. Even after 25 years, they followed through and do it. And it was like competition. I'd go in the elevator for 25 years with the prosecutor. Hear him laughing and saying, "Yeah, we're gonna win this bout. We're gonna take Ronnie down and stuff." And I'm sitting in the elevator, and I'm saying, "Hey, I'm in here, you guys." And they got to know me and know who I was. But it created the monster in me, not the monsters that are on death row. I'm not going to quit fighting. The journey of hope is the group that I fight with. And now I'm a rogue in Utah. They're kind of scared of me in Utah because I do things that's happened to me. I do things that I feel is right. So, but even in Utah, they have a deal. I think we can bring forward this year that abolish the death penalty again, and that's only the second time in 3 years. So.
Well, Randy, thank you so much for thank you for being willing to take your brave story and to be out there and to be on the side that it's a hard thing to say, my brother murdered someone and I want there not to be executions for other people, that you don't want to happen to other people what your brother did to someone else and was done to him. That's a really difficult and brave thing to do. And I'm just so proud of you. I'm proud to call you a friend. Thanks, man.
Like you, when we get arrested for something, I tried my whole life not to get arrested. We all got arrested. That was my second arrest on the step.
Yeah.
Yes, for the same thing. You were right there next to me. I was really sure. I think we made our poster. You called, short guy. You called, and I remember looking at you and thinking, powerful. And I didn't know who you are at the time, but boy, I sure got to know you and Derek and everybody else, John Deere, and everybody Dave Bonham with. I've known for 5 years, but it's been a great experience just meeting you type of people to know I'm not by myself.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you do.
I'm up for doing it again anytime, any place. So let's do
We've
that.
got about 3.5, 4 years. We'll be ready. I'm hoping in that next time we'll have this done.
Yeah, I'd be up for doing it. Yeah, that's great. All right, and now we're going to have a chance to hear from Suzanne. Suzanne's story is equally as powerful and heartbreaking and beautiful all at the same time. Hello, Suzanne.
Good morning.
Nice
Doug.
to see you, friend.
Third time I've seen you this year.
I know. We're starting to make a habit out of this. I like it. Suzanne, you probably remember we were zip-tied and seated next to each other in the basement of the U.S. Supreme Court for that number of hours. And hearing your story as we were feeling the pain of, the U.S. Supreme Court police keeping zip ties on our hands for hours after hours. In what I saw is just an act of cruelty, just because they could. We weren't going to harm anyone, never were. And that was a very difficult experience for you, but nothing as difficult as what brought you to that place, to the Supreme Court steps, and to being zip tied and set in a chair for hours and then put in a prison cell. I asked you that day, how did you get here? And it was heartbreaking to hear at that moment. And so I'm heartbroken to ask you again, but I think your story is so powerful. What brought you to this? You've come through a different angle than Abe or Derek or Randy.
Definitely a different angle. On December 22nd, 1996, it was a day that changed my life. We lived next door to the church where my father was a pastor, Reverend Bill Bossler, and a man came to our door, and as soon as my dad opened the door, he was being stabbed by this man. I came out to help. and he turned around and stabbed me. And as my dad tried to get up, he was stabbing him many times again and again and again. He collapsed for the second time. And then I got up to help, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and I backed into the living room. I could see his face holding the knife towards my face as my dad crawled to the front door, and I saw the knife come to my face. I turned my head, and it embedded in my head twice here, and I went down. And I pretended I was dead because I thought if I didn't pretend I was dead, he would stab me more times to make sure I was dead. I went through the house we found out later, to get money for drugs. And one thing I wasn't able to do that I was planning on, once I got 911 to say that they're coming, I wanted to plan to go to my father, and if he was going to die there on the floor, I didn't want him to die by himself. I wanted to hold him in my arms and take his last breath if he was going to die. But as we all know, that things don't always go our way. Yeah. And I had surgery on my head. 100 pieces of skull and a couple pieces of my brain had to be taken out. And instead of us going up to see my dad's one and only granddaughter, they had to come down to see if we were alive. And that whole next week, all they did was ask, is my dad alive? Is my dad alive? And they answered, yes, Suzanne, he is. But I knew the day later, this man, James Campbell, was caught. And why he was caught? Because he had so much blood in his hands from my dad and myself, and he sliced his hand twice with a knife. So I'm still actually finding blood in things that I impact or go through in my. And after that, so the doctors informed my mother that she was allowed to tell me the truth. Yeah. Because I would still be alive, more than likely. And she told me, and it was that day, it was the worst day of my life, because I hoped that I had saved my dad's life, because obviously that area still needed my father. So after that, I had to ask a question about forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And that's where I had to take it into a different form, because I thought, I should know what forgiveness is all about. Me being a PK, teacher's kid, and it was a lot different than I ever felt before. Wow. So I went through the next 10 and a half years through hell that the Florida courts put me through, and the prosecutors, because the prosecutors never respected my family's opinion against death penalty. So I had to finally, after he was found guilty, and we were on the third resentencing trial, I had to hire my own lawyer to protect my victim's rights. And I was finally able to get up and to testify when he asked me the question, Suzanne, what is your occupation? And I said, we work to abolish death penalty. And that's where it turned around, and I was able to get him off the death row and into life.
So you worked for 10 years to try to have the person that killed your father and stabbed you to not receive the death penalty.
Correct.
That's an incredible story. I think so many people hold on to their notion that we need to think about the family victims and honor them by keeping the death penalty. I've heard it so many times. I'm sure you've heard it far more than I ever will, in a much more painful way. But you and so many other family victims of murder victims, family members of murder victims, are making a different argument altogether. You worked against the state to try to save the life of the person that killed your father.
That's the part that sucked, because I thought that me being a victim, my opinion was very important, no matter what it was for against death penalty. Because I had seen it on the news and in the paper, people getting up on the stand and being allowed to say, yes, I want that person to get the death penalty. And I was wondering, why was I not allowed? Because here's what happened the last trial, is that I was threatened. I was threatened by the judge.
Incredible.
Be put in jail for 6 months if I said my opinion about the death penalty. After I said what I just told you to the jurors, I'm against death. I work to abolish death penalty. I was threatened to be put in jail for 6 months and fined $500. So anymore after that, the victims advocates wouldn't have anything to do with us after that.
So so to clarify this picture, when you were working in the sentencing around the sentencing of the person that killed your father, and you were trying to say, I don't want him to be executed. I want you to listen to the family member who you say this is, who a lot of people think that's the one that this execution system is there to support. And you're saying, I don't want it to happen. The judge said, Ms. Bosler, if you continue to express your opinion opposing the death penalty, I will put you in jail. That just seems so unbelievable, which tells me, and I'm sure you draw your own conclusions from this, that the commitment to keeping the death penalty is not primarily there to support the family victims, the family members of murder victims.
Exactly. And that's where I had to ask myself, am I in America? Because when all of us stood at the Supreme Court, you included, we were under those 4 words, like you said. I keep thinking about it all the time. Equal justice under law.
Yeah.
And then the other day when I said the Pledge of Allegiance to this, when I was with the students that morning, it would say liberty and justice for all. I mean, I don't know what justice is anymore sometimes.
Yeah. And the amount of bravery for you to become a news headline again, 10 years, I'm sure it was a big news for people that your father was murdered and that you were attacked. For you then to be made a spectacle again by the judicial system as someone who has done something wrong by trying to stop another death. When I first heard your story and hearing it again now, it's just unreal that somewhere we have this system that makes sense to people, that you're the problem, the person trying to stop. You tried to stop the killing of your father, and you tried to stop the killing of the person who killed your father, and somehow you're the problem. Threatened with jail, put in jail last January. What kind of a world do we live in where people like you are the problem?
Yes, us working for life is a problem.
Working for life is a problem. I am so glad you're out there. And so you could have taken that situation and been so beaten down, threatened, worried, and said, I just need to get away from all this and go heal. And I know you've had to do a lot of healing. But you, again, along with Randy and Derek and Abe and the others, are out there not hiding from this. You're out there stirring this up and trying to make this change.
Yes, as Randy said, though, is that these are my family. This is my healing process.
Incredible.
And so this is one thing that I just wanted to bring up before I go, is that this is what I show to everybody. Why kill people? Who kill people? To show us that killing people is wrong. To me, it's a very simple, simple thing, because to me, I want to say this to the government. They're telling us that it's against the law to murder, and then it's okay to murder for them.
Yeah.
It's like backwards for me.
Yeah.
It's a hypocritical statement there.
Yeah.
And not only that, is that this is part of my healing process, and this is a reason I'm still alive, working with Journey of Hope, Derek, exonerated, and people like Abe and you to abolish the death penalty.
Yeah. And to be clear, this isn't your profession. As we heard in our trial, you are a top-notch hairdresser in Florida, right? Like you are out there doing this work on your own time, often with your own energy, with your own money, working in a system that doesn't even say thank you. Sometimes it pushes back against you. And so this is not like you've found an industry that you're a part of, and you've somehow made a living off of being someone. When they asked you in court, what do you do for a living? You said, I work to stop the death penalty. That's with no pay. That's you paying for the privilege to be able to do this kind of work.
Absolutely, yes.
It's a great burden. So I just want to say to anybody who's heard any of these stories, if you say to yourself, well, I want to help Suzanne to tell that story. I want to help Randy tell that story. I want to support Derek and Abe and all the people who are doing this kind of work. There's a way for people to financially support this journey you're on, paying for hotel rooms, traveling around, helping you all have food while you're away from home. I mean, when you're gone for 14 days, this isn't like or 17 days, you're not on some vacation. And a lot of people can't even afford to not work by being on vacation, let alone being out doing this kind of advocacy that you're doing. So I just, you're a hero to me.
It's not a vacation because like yesterday, after I'd said my story about at least 10 or more times, I was breaking down a little bit yesterday. I had to renew myself to get my energy back because believe it or not, us telling our stories over and over again, it's good for some to hear it, but sometimes it kind of it's not easy for us too.
Yes. I've been thinking that the entire time that you've been on this tour, how hard it is every night and every day to have to make yourselves vulnerable again and to have to re-experience all that you're experiencing. And well, you're awfully inspiring to me, and I know to so many others, and I just think it's so great.
I'm going to say towards the end is that I think I told you and everybody else is that my dad's favorite hymn was "Let There Be Peace on Earth," and let it begin with me. But whoever is watching, let it begin with all of us.
Yeah.
All of us a part of it. Death penalty, it might be one issue, but there's issues within this issue that we need people at, whether it's counseling or the legal part, you name it. We need everybody on every part that needs to address some of the stuff in the issue.
Thank you so much. It's Journey of Hope, moving from I always get the tagline wrong. Moving from violence to healing. Is that right?
Correct. That's correct.
Moving from violence to healing. Wouldn't that be great if we moved in this whole world from a narrative of violence to a narrative of healing? So you can find Journey of Hope at all the places. Look in the string that's below. If you're listening to this via the podcast, you can find it by going onto my Facebook profile or the Journey of Hope page on Facebook and journeyofhope.org. Friends, it's so good to see you. I really wish I was there with you. And all the best to you tonight. And if you're in Texas, look them up and go join them in all the good work.
Join us in Austin on Saturday at 2:00. There's a march, and that's the final thing. But again, as Doug said, you can find all the links at deathpenaltyaction.org/Journey of Hope. And
so Austin,
bring us to your state.
So Austin, Texas on Saturday. Tell all your friends in Austin, Texas on Saturday to go see these great people.
That's right. And these people are all available to come and speak at conferences and your church or wherever. So we can arrange that. Just get with us.
Yeah, and you all live all around the country, Florida, Ohio, Utah. Randy, are you still in Utah? Alaska, Florida, Utah, Minneapolis,
Ohio, Kansas, Tom's in the other room. Among the others who are rescued with us, we're here also in a support capacity. Scott Langley, Jack Payton Travers, Tom Muther, myself. So
it's a reunion tour.
Is here.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, congratulations, everybody, and thanks for all you're doing.
Thanks everybody for watching.